In this episode of Unmute the Voices, I welcome back Curtis Stewart, a composer and violinist who is basically all over right now, having his music performed by major symphony orchestras and ensembles. In this episode, I welcome him right here into the studio where we talk about love, we talk about the act of sharing. He also predicts where he's going to be in 1 year and why he considers himself the modern-day version of the Chevalier de Saint-Georges. That's right now, right here on Unmute the Voices. Welcome to Unmute the Voices, Curtis. How are you? You're in Seattle.
I'm in Seattle. I was just in Pittsburgh, and I've been traveling around, and I'm really happy to be here with you. I was just hanging with your kids yesterday.
Yes, at Key to Change.
At Key to Change, yes.
Yeah, and most people don't know that you're actually a music educator. You, of course, have this great performance career, but before that were...
I was
in the inner city.
I was,
teaching.
I guess anywhere in New York City is the inner city.
Speaking as a New Yorker.
As a New Yorker, I'm trying to, as you said, trying to keep my accent back. But I taught at Laguardia Performing Arts High School for 9 years. Actually, my dad taught there before, and then I went to school there as well. And I did my student teaching there. I got my master's in education. And just was in there.
Wow.
Yep.
How was it? Did you ever have any classes with your dad? Or?
No, he was my homeroom teacher, though.
Ooh.
He was my homeroom teacher. And Marcus Gilmore, the amazing world-known drummer, we were in homeroom together. The only reason I remember that is because we just did this show with American Composers Orchestra a week ago, and he wrote this concerto for his jazz trio and the orchestra. And anyway, we were in homeroom together, and we'd be bad. My dad would be like, yo, stop talking back. He'd be yelling at my friends. I'd be instantly the not cool kid. Anyway.
Did you call him dad in class?
I didn't call him anything. I avoided him as much as I could. I was just not trying not to, because he was the jazz band teacher, and he helped the school win the Ellington competition a couple of years in a row, and he was cool, like going on tour with people like Dizzy Gillespie and Sonny Rollins. So he was on the road and in a time when you could do that in public high school. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I left was because, my career started doing what it did. And I remember the day I told my kids that I was leaving to go work at Juilliard, and they yelled at me. They cried and they yelled at me.
What did they say?
They were like, you can't leave. This kid literally got on a chair and like, you cannot leave. And they started like sending like TikToks to people around the building, and people were leaving their class to come into the room to like hang. I was so incredibly moved. I didn't know. You know how high school kids are? They don't tell you how they're feeling. And that was one of those moments when I realized like, oh man, am I messing? I was actually wondered if pursuing my vision and dreams for being a composer and a soloist, if that was really what I needed to be doing. It was like a moment where I really questioned if me pursuing my own personal goals was just as important as being in the room with them. So it was a moment.
How did you get to that point where you chose your kind of dreams and your path versus kind of the day-to-day of having this job of working in the classroom?
Well, I think, both of my parents were musicians, so I was kind of forged in that household. So I didn't form my vision really. It's more like uncovering it and just accepting it. That I am, for me, creative music is just music. It's not creative. It's just the music that happens, the music that I'm interested in, the music that I'm moved by. It's the only thing I can do well. Mm-hmm. Like even when I do play Mozart, it's going to be Curtisified. Actually, that's something I said to presenter. It's like, well, we could do the Curtisified version of this Chevalier de Saint-Georges, or we could do we could do whatever. But anyway, so everything I do has that kind of twinge to it. Mm-hmm. And, because of that, as a young person coming out of out of college and, auditioning for this and that, a lot of industry folks didn't really get it. And as a young person that thought that this was the only way music could be made, I didn't know how to explain it and do that, as we were talking about code switching, to make sure it's framed in the way that is palatable and feels valuable to the people buying. So I had no clue how to sell this art in the best sense, like to frame it as something that is of value and not just weird. And so the second I started to understand how to frame it is when I decided to pursue my vision, actually.
Wow. So what sort of advice would you give to someone who is kind of at a crossroads, who has dreams or ambition to do something, but they might be afraid because their current situation is so comfortable?
I think, the moment that I had probably 10 coffee dates with people that I knew in the industry that had even just a quasi like mine, and had that date and then talked to them about 5 other people that they would recommend I talk to. So just talking to as many different people as possible and just hear, I'm thinking about doing this and I want to do this. What do you think about that? Or, just that was the first thing I did, because I'm just I don't take leaps. A lot of people like to, I know some artists who just leap and they just quit this and they leap because that's how they know they'll get it done. But I'm the type of person where, like, I need to be in this safe zone and then I can plan it all out and I can come up with 100 options, and so that when only 5 of them work out, I'm still good, because 5 have worked out instead of that one thing that I've leaped to do. That's just my mode. I think everybody's different, because, when there are people who are just out there and in a state of risk will succeed because they have their own back and they will follow through. And I just didn't know. I now understand that I am that person too, but at that point I didn't know that I was that person. So it's, just talk to as many people as possible. Just practice talking about your art. So just practice talking about it. That's really what it is. And then you'll see that little smile that you just gave me, like, it's like, oh, that works. Okay, that doesn't work. Just talking about it works. And that's just as much as being in the practice room. I mean, being in the practice room is number one. And then number 2 is being out and actually seeing how it works in the world.
So basically kind of giving yourself kind of daily affirmations of talking about yourself doing the work or doing the thing that you desire to do.
Yeah, and bouncing it off real people that you trust, and asking those people who some other people might be that you could trust. And then, just believe, it's going to feel like you're in a movie. Like, I remember when I walked into Juilliard, first of all, I started out as an administrator, like a chamber music manager, and then I ended up becoming faculty of this one class, the performance practice of the blues. And now I'm on the chamber music faculty teaching improvisation and teaching like Mozart quartets. And so it feels like a movie for me. It feels like,
good
I don't know, this movie, this is a
comedy,
fun.
comedy.
No, we said we weren't going to talk about this, Quinn. We said we were not going to talk about this. No, it feels like...
Is it a horror? I mean, what is it?
It's definitely a thriller. It's a thriller. But it's more like an action movie. Like, I'm here, I'm doing this. Like, for example, was it yesterday? I was in Pittsburgh, and my flight got canceled. Then my bus got canceled, so I couldn't go pick up my violin, so I had to go here, and now I'm figuring out a violin. I'm still on the phone trying to figure out a violin in Vancouver. It's like an action movie.
Okay.
But that's just my life. But what I'm saying is, like, when you're in the room talking to the person about your dreams and talking to them about your vision, it's not going to feel real because it isn't yet. And that's great. It's like this thing that you're creating. You're actually creating your life. And I guess what I mean by talking to as many people as possible makes it real. And you're building a support system, and you're building passion and love for yourself and with other people around your work so you can make it as real as possible. And you're doing the work, you're practicing, you're creating, you're constantly making. So it's the act, like we were just talking about, the act of becoming.
Right. And do you feel like you have become?
No, I'm still becoming.
Okay.
Right now I'm practicing saying Curtis Stewart, violinist, composer. I've always composed. I've always created my own music. I've always improvised since I was like 8. Because my parents are both musicians, we had this electric keyboard where I could put the headphones in, and I put the headphones on, and I'd just be like making music just as a kid, like, 8-year-old, because I didn't want my parents to hear it, because I was, I just wanted to be in my own world. And I've been doing that the whole time. And that is being a composer. People think of being a composer as a certain thing. But that is the act of composing. Now, there's a lot of other acts, like when you're writing for a symphony orchestra, you can't just do that and just say, okay, now your turn. You have to write it down. You have to understand orchestration, you have balance. You have to understand budgets and how you only get that, those 3 20-minute rehearsals. And so how do I frame this? How do I talk about this really quickly so that they all hit? Yeah, I lost track of what the question was, but, I'm in the act of, calling myself a violinist composer, just accepting this stuff that I've been doing my whole life as what it is. And people seem to be accepting it. I'm writing for groups around the country now and playing with this next year. I'm playing with 4 major orchestras, including the Chicago Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
With Music Now. Yep.
Wow.
With Jessie Montgomery, who's been a great friend and mentor and colleague.
Yeah.
So it's happening.
So you're kind of like the modern day Chevalier de Saint-Georges.
That's right. That's right.
Is that a desire of yours?
No, it hadn't been until, people haven't said it out loud.
Like
I mean,
right. He had a wig, but
yeah. My
yours
peruke
is real.
I need to I need to dye this gray or white, and then we'll be good.
Don't worry, it'll turn gray eventually.
I love that moment in the movie where at the end he finally just leaves the thing on the rack. Did you see the movie, the new one?
I didn't see
You didn't see it? You're like, I got a movie. I'm not going to watch that one.
He's
got a movie. He keeps saying he's got a movie. I want to see it. I've only seen the trailer, bro.
Well,
you thought it was only going to go this way.
And okay.
Uh-oh. I just poked the bear.
Here's the real gag.
Okay.
I've got 3.
3 movies. Dr.
It's a
Morris.
trilogy. It's a short.
I want to see it.
I'll let you see it sometime.
Okay.
I'll let you see it sometime. Anyway, yes, This is about you, the modern day Chevalier de Saint-Georges.
That's right. Okay, of course. See how I tried to deflect? I tried my best, and he still brought it back. That's why I call him Doctor.
Oh, jeez. So your life is a movie, and
it's feeling like it right this moment. I want to just keep it that way,
But you know what? That's kind of good, because from the outside, looking at your accomplishments, you've traveled around the world. You've got your quartet, the PUBLIQuartet. You've been nominated 3 times for Grammy Awards. You're very well respected. You teach at the Juilliard School. What is missing from your career right now?
Right now, you know what? I do kind of miss that sense of that feeling that I had when I was teaching high school.
Which was
that like this is my squad, this is my crew and squad. We have it, but I'll see you when I come out here in Seattle. I'll see this person when I'm there. It still feels very scattered, and I don't know. I wouldn't say that's missing, but I would say that's maybe something I'm trying to move towards, having a home. My home base is New York. My home base is PUBLIQuartet. We're, that's family, musical family. But that was awesome. Being the teacher in the room. I would, in my music theory classes, we would have games. It would be like a sports game. People would be screaming about minor third, dominant 7 flat 5. It would be like a sports game. And kids were literally walking out the room trembling because it was visceral. And leading these orchestras and doing things in my classrooms, it was a vibe. And I wouldn't say it's missing. It's just I miss it. Yeah.
So how do you create that vibe with different orchestras and different ensembles that you work with?
Yeah, I try to just,
Do you need to put that in your contract?
Yeah. Must be a vibe. There must be a vibe. See, that's why this is happening, because I put that in the contract. Dr. Morrison.
I
Okay,
know, but
I can do that.
But you got to kind of create the vibe too, right?
No, I'm working on it, and different groups are different. I was just doing this thing with the Virginia Symphony there. Shout out to the Virginia Symphony. They just played, and Eric Jacobson just played 2 symphonic works that I wrote this season only. I wrote 2 different pieces based on Dvorak's Slavonic dances and then based on the Dvorak American Quartet. And they get it. And so, we had a reading in September, and then we were laughing, we were joking. After the concert, we had a little party, and we were hanging out, and I don't really know how it gets created. It's just I attempt to be myself.
I see.
Wherever I can be. We just did this thing with American Composers Orchestra where we went down we do readings with orchestras around the country for other composers. And I was a mentor composer, meaning I'm like helping the composer translate their ideas to the orchestra because they're mostly doing this for the first time or the second time. And so, and they're all brilliant. The composers barely need this mentorship, but to have someone sitting right here with them as they're in front of a massive orchestra, I think is helpful. And so I'm learning just as much, hopefully, as they are in that moment about what they need, about what it's like to occupy that space. Because when a whole orchestra is looking at you, they don't just want to know that in bar 32, that should be mezzo forte and not mezzo piano. Although they think they want that, and they know they want that.
But they want more.
In addition, they want spirit. And that's something we were also talking about, how do you tap into the spiritual in music and not just the religious? I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about dogma. I'm talking about your musical energy and spirit and being vulnerable and open to sharing that when, the orchestra's going to, at first, they're going to look at you like that.
How do you bring your spirit? I mean, you're very vibrant. You've got a lot
right
of
now.
energy and
Coffee, baby. I wasn't like this before they turned the camera on.
It was makeup.
It was
right, and the hair, right?
Yeah, I know. I need to shave a little bit.
But what does one do to bring kind of their spiritual side or bring their personality out in the music? What does one have to do?
There was this one book that I read called The Salable Prose, which sounds horrible. Like it's like a way of really selling your writing. And the book was all about vulnerability, actually. It was all about how do you write open letter, like writing as many open letters to an ex-partner, write an open letter to your mother or father about how you really felt about this moment that was hard. How do you... It was a way of structuring vulnerability. I think that was one of the more important books that I've ever read because every chapter is like an exercise in it's not just therapeutic, but it's also giving you literary ways of structuring that vulnerability. And I think musicians can do that with their music. You can do that with your writing. You can do that in a rehearsal. And she said, there's this one thing I always, actually right before we had this in my mind, there's these 3 words: learn, laugh, learn, laugh, and share. Boom. That's the 3 best ways to have fun at summer camp. That's what she said in that book.
Wow.
And so, as long as I'm learning from you in this scenario, I'm finding ways of sharing myself, and then we can laugh about those 3 things, all that stuff. I think, how can you deny those 3? Everybody wants to do that.
Do you think that if more classical musicians learned how to be vulnerable by learning, loving, and sharing, that the person who is not as familiar with classical music might not deem it as boring?
I hope so. I think boring is a funny word because... we were just listening to some, classical era music as we were walking into the studio, and we were getting into it. Yeah. But some people might hear it and be like, oh, that's that. Like, oh, that's that stuff I heard outside of 7-Eleven. That indicates to me that I shouldn't be standing here. You know what I mean? So everybody has a different. It's just boring is a funny word.
Well, it's linked to an experience. Though,
yeah, right.
Right. We were listening to the classical music, in a way, kind of poking fun at it.
That's true.
Right, because we're classical musicians.
That's
but
right.
someone else who might listen to that might feel like that music's not for me because of the perception,
yes,
right, or maybe an experience that they had with music that made them feel uncomfortable.
I bet if some people, well, we can see our videographer's here, maybe he can attest to this, but if people see us, specifically, not me and you, but us, reacting to music in the way we did, the joyous, poking fun way, yeah, I do think it would have a more universal effect because
and would not be considered boring.
Yeah, they're not just seeing the guy with the wig, and then they're seeing two dudes in the studio just having fun with this stuff.
But we couldn't do that at a concert hall,
right? Yet we couldn't do that yet, and that's something we were just talking about. Actually, I was just at the League of American Orchestras, and we were talking about how do we. I was talking to Kebersayan Charles, who's an amazing bass player, composer, and they were talking about they feel really comfortable being on stage, being the soloist and wearing whatever they need to do that represents them, but they don't feel comfortable watching a concert and sitting there and having to wear what they need to wear to fit in. And how do we make the audience feel like a comfortable, safe place?
What if we as classical musicians started doing it?
Yeah, what if we did it? What if you did it?
Right, but you know what I'm saying? But I'm just thinking that if classical musicians started doing that, then maybe that would translate or transfer over to non-classical music listeners to say, oh, if they're doing it, it must be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
right?
That's what representation is. I think when people use the word representation, people think, black people on stages, which is true. We need that too. But it's like the people on the stage, not just the way they look, not just the demographic that they hit, but their spirit.
Yeah.
And it's like their behavior. Like, you don't want to force anybody to be anything other than what they are. And this is an article. This is something I was just talking about at a class at the Starling DeLay Symposium at the Juilliard School. And it's like, can you be you and be a classical musician?
Yes!
Can you be you? Exactly. Is that classical, though?
I am me all the time.
Exactly. Please be that. Please.
You know what I'm saying?
And we need that.
Yeah.
I actually just got I just played a concert. I have an album out called Of Love, and it's about my mom, who was a violinist. She passed away. And I moved into her apartment, and I basically wrote the music in the apartment. That I was her caretaker in that apartment. We did our last interview from that apartment. And I did this whole show kind of putting my feelings out there, music I learned from my mother, music my mom taught me, essentially.
Yeah.
And the spirit that she taught me, etc. I did it. The whole room felt like a living room to me, and people, up on their feet, blah, blah, blah. People really felt like they were feeling it and getting it. 2.5 hour long concert. They were right there with me. A review came out. It was like, this is a grim start to whatever festival, and I can't believe this is what new music people are celebrating as new music these days. And a self-referential album is blah 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 blah. And it's like, are we allowed to be ourselves? Are we allowed to refer to ourselves? Like, it's almost as if, because we play Mozart and Bach, Beethoven of the past, which is beautiful, we should keep doing that. Because we do that, somehow we are tapped into something that is beyond being human. We're beyond being real. And so therefore, when we make music, we can't start from where we are. Like, we are somehow more than us. And we're not. We are just me and you in this room.
And if people only knew who Mozart really was.
Right, exactly. That's
right?
why a movie like
He
Amadeus.
couldn't keep no job.
Well,
The
that's
common American.
yeah, right. Mozart was American AF.
Arguably
But-
racist. Ooh.
Anyway, we can come back to that. We should come back to that. I'm not putting that over here. Yeah, but like for example, the movie Amadeus, right? Quote unquote, humanizes that person. But why do we have to humanize anybody? Like, like, why did we lift them up here in the first place? What does greatness actually mean? Can you be great and human? Does a teacher in the room have to be totally infallible? I thought it was so beautiful watching you with your students yesterday because you were, ribbing them and they were asking questions and then they were talking to you. It was like really a beautiful teacher-student relationship. And there is a power dynamic. You are the one in the control of the room. And you are also as fully yourself as possible because that's the only way they're going to... Who are they learning from if they're not learning from you? Like, if they're not witnessing you, who are they not learning from? And that's, again, why I really miss being that person in the room. I feel like that is... I learned so much from them as well. Anyway, I'm talking about like 10 different things at the same time, so no.
No, I appreciate this. Thank you. I have one final question for you.
Uh-oh. Which was it going to be? Yeah.
A year from now,
Uh-huh.
what happens in your life?
Well, we've just won the Grammy.
Hey!
I say we.
Yeah.
A year from now.
Yeah, a year from now. When you're looking back on this interview, 1 year from now, when you watch this interview again, and I do want you to watch it, where are you a year from now?
Well, I hope, well, actually, literally a year from now, I will have performed 4 times with like the Oregon Symphony, the Virginia Symphony, the Chicago Symphony, and I don't want to, anyway, so I will have had that experience, and I really hope that after that experience, I don't feel jaded. I hope that I feel just...
What's your expectation after these performances?
I hope, well, first of all, I hope I'll have plenty of, video and audio proof that the vibe is real, that we can maintain quote-unquote excellence and still have a vibe and still be ourselves. I'm hoping that, more other soloists, including Kebra and people out there, choose to pick up that mantle and lead the way, continue to lead the way. I just hope I don't look back and kind of write it off. Like to witness the joy that we have in the room right now and be like, oof, I didn't even know it was coming. I think, I hope that is not how I feel. But the way I hope to feel is not victorious, not like a champion of anything, but like just to feel heartened, encouraged to go deeper and to challenge myself to write, to orchestrate better and to find even more tools with the violin. And I hope I find myself heartened.
I hope you do too. And I hope that you keep this joy. I hope the joy remains and that it's even bigger.
There we go. Yeah. Well, with people like you around, it will be.
Hey. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. You're always a big laugh and a lot of fun.
Hey, cool.
Yeah. I love your energy.
Yay.
Thank you. And thank you as well for watching this episode of Unmute the Voices. I'm Dr. Quentin Morris, and I hope you enjoy your day.